Welcome to another segment of Lore You Should Know, where we like to talk about D&D storylines and information that you can use in your upcoming game that might be centered around Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft that comes out on May 18th. Or it's just really fun to know, fun stuff to get your brain going. I am Greg Tito, and I am joined by Wes Schneider. Hi, Wes.
Hi, Greg.
Very excited to talk through this domain of dread, Tepest. Which I don't know very much about, and I don't know if everyone listening does either. So what's the elevator pitch for Tepest as a domain?
All right. So every one of the domains of dread have some horror genre inspiration to them. So I don't think it's any surprise for like Barovia with Count Strad von Zarovich is very much inspired by gothic horror tropes. Or you might have something like the domain of Blutzfer, which is more like alien horror that has like a cosmic horror twist to it. Tepest, we took this domain in a direction which is deeply inspired by folk horror. So this is, films like The Wicker Man or Midsummer, or stories like that, where the horror is at the fringes of civilization. It's agricultural. It's in the traditions that have been underpinning societies for a long time, or that, civilized, or what we consider normal society is like, this is normal, but then you get beyond the safety of what and no, there's something older, there's something else.
And it kind of plays on, correct me if I'm wrong, does it play on the idea that rural settings are usually portrayed as idyllic, and that everything's happy here because we just farm the land, and isn't that great? And then it takes that idea and flips it up, be like, no, everything is not okay, because they're growing things that are terrible.
Yeah, it's like, it's rural, so it's closer to nature, and that's good. And not necessarily.
Interesting.
So Tepest as a domain is... The domain itself is pretty wild. You've got high mountains, you've got dense forests, and you've got land that isn't so much that good for growing and survival. And in Tepest is a single village called Victal. And Victal is populated by happy people who are super excited to farm the land and to fish in the lake, and everything's great and nice and good all the time, forever.
And the young people are children of the corn who just love to...
Well, that's one of the interesting things, is if you come to visit, you might start to notice that there's not many kids around.
Oh.
And the kids that are around, well, a lot of these people are human or humanish, but all the kids seem to be hex blood, which are one of the new lineages in the book, where there are individuals who have been brought into being through the help of a hag. And that's a little weird. And then so is some of this folksy art and some of these traditions, and particularly a seasonal festival called the Tithing.
I'm anticipating all of the ways that this could go.
Well, at that point, just to pull back the curtain a little bit, so the Dark Lord of this domain, actually we'll start a little farther back. In previous editions, the Dark Lords of the domain was just a group of hags called the Three Hags. For Van Richten's Guide, we update the story of the Three Hags a little bit. In Tepest, rather than saying that this is just that the domain is ruled by a collection of three hags, we pick out one of them in particular, the hag Lorinda. And she's always been one of the three hags. But the story that we'd explored with Lorinda is that, for reasons that I'll let readers find out, she has decided to turn against her other two hag sisters and has imprison them within their own cauldron, within a moving fortress called the Gurgle that ranges almost like Baba Yaga's hut style
Oh,
through
cool.
Tepest. So now she endlessly works to create her own servants, children, whatever have you, but she doesn't have the power of a full coven, which means that she's limited. So her creations are ill-fated and don't typically survive too terribly long. So she
Oh,
creates these monstrous spawn, but they're not long for this world. But there's one way that she's found can to get a little extra longevity out of what she creates about her maid family, and that's to have the people of Tepest essentially make sacrifices to this creature that she creates. Through these sacrifices, through these rituals, she's able to extend the life and the livelihoods of her creations a little longer. She's manipulated this town and allowed them to create their own mythology that is, oh, the mother protects us. Oh, she brings the fertility to the crops. Oh, she's the reason everything's fine and safe here. All we have to do is once a season have this grand festival, and whoever is like the chosen of the festival, they get to have this, slightly fatal but still honored encounter uh, with the mother and her creation. I sort of like the idea of coming to Tepest, meeting the people of Victal, being like, okay, y'all maybe aren't great to begin with, but you certainly are in a worse situation than you deserve. Experiencing that, leaving and having other adventures, and then coming back and finding like, oh, you're still doing your thing. Ooh, and it's worse now.
yeah. I should have dealt with this before. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So how do the children that you mentioned early on, being hexbloods, how does that figure into this?
So there's a description of Victal in detail, as well as the tie that happens there, about just little elements that are off about the town. Like in general, the people of Victal are, quite friendly, but they're also friendly under duress. And they're friendly because they would prefer to maybe sacrifice a stranger to the horrible thing at the end of the tithing or the end of the tithe, as opposed to their neighbor or loved ones or whatever have you. But, some things are definitely off, whether it's in the artistry, whether it's in the music, or whether it's, hey, all of the kids here definitely have some Fey-touched angle to them. What's up with that? Hey, let's go have a drink at the pub.
So you mentioned the Fey connection a couple of times here. How does that figure into the cosmology, right? Like, is there a way that, like, if you're in the Feywild, you can go to this domain and vice versa?
Definitely. I mean, this is the sort of thing where there's, with the thematic variety throughout the book and the way that the mists work, and the way that the mists of Ravenloft can just sort of like creep into any part of the multiverse, you don't necessarily need to be like on an adventure on the material plane or like doing this spooky thing over here. I mean, you could be traveling the Feywild, you could be on an outer plane, you could be wherever, and the mists might have reason to scoop you up and bring you into a domain for, for a that's your experience now, or for, a night or two horror adventure. And if you're playing a heavily Fey inspired sort of campaign, and you'd like to do those sorts of stories with more of a horror twist, Tepest is a fantastic setting for that sort of vibe.
Excellent. Well, I am looking forward to all the stories that people will be able to tell using all the domains of dread and tools within Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, and can't wait to hear more. So thanks a lot, Wes.
Yeah, thanks for having me.